Hello everyone, welcome again to Exercise Physiology for Sport lecture for week 4, fall semester for Concordia University. Once again, I'm Professor Mark Baines, and we'll get right to it, talking about concepts from the past weeks. We want to make sure we have clear, and then going on to concepts that you need to make sure you understand or can apply very well, at least, going into week 4. That said, with week 3. First and foremost, whenever we're talking about anything in discussion board posts, and really anything that you take in from this class as you read the chapters, you do the Learn Smarts, as you perform Learn Smart activities, as you write your paper in 2 weeks-ish, 2+ weeks, and next week for your exam. That said, any of those information, you want to be thinking about these concepts are the intention of applying information during and between training to maximize benefit from exercise. That's really what we're doing. When you write out your discussion board posts, I'll always ask for more clarity. When you think about it as if I'm your assistant, I'm reading this thing you've written out here for the program, and you tell me we want to do high intensity. My question is, what does high intensity mean? What do you mean by long work periods? Is that, what exactly is that? How long is a rest period? And the rest period is 30 seconds always, no matter what? Or we're looking for something, if they don't, do I make them go 30 seconds rest no matter what happens? If they are performing well, if they're not performing well, do I adjust it? That kind of thing. That's how you need to write out those posts, and that's of course how we need to really design our training so we're prepared for any possibility to maximize the benefits to our athletes, which I know we all want, right? That said, of course, when we program things, it's pretty clear from some of the posts in the last couple weeks that some people are posting, and you probably know who you are, posting things you like to do. You got to really be careful about things that you like because a previous coach had gone over it, or something you did when you were an athlete and you really enjoyed it. That's great. But really, for someone who gets a master's degree for this and is a coach and has the responsibility for the betterment of our athletes, you need to make sure that is backed by the science. Not kind of backed by the science, not kind of within the realm of possibility. There's not really a lot of right and wrong in what we do. But at the end of the day, you need to be asking yourself, is this really the safest, most efficient, most effective way to design our training program, as opposed to something that was simply done in the past, or some other coach had done with me, or something I like. Those are not things we want to be programming for our athletes. We want to be programming the things that get us the most value out of what we do with the least amount of risk, right? That said, RPE and force output relationship. There's still some differentiation for some of you regarding the idea of what those two things are. RPE is your perception of effort. You could actually give high-level effort and have low output. So high perception of effort is not necessarily indicative of high force output. When we refer to higher intensity or increasing the intensity, we don't want to increase the effort and not have an increased output or increased performance. It's okay for RPE to go up, but RPE should not go up if the performance is not also going up. If that's the case, we need to drop down the intensity of the exercise. That's what the person who's having difficulty with the exercise is essentially telling us. That's hard to do in a group, there's no question about it. But it's our responsibility to be looking out for the betterment of our athletes, have our athletes look out for each other, let us know if someone's not performing well. It's easy in something like how high can you jump, how far can you run, how far can you throw something, basic track concepts from a standpoint of knowing if someone's getting better or not. It's a lot more complicated when it comes to other sports like basketball and soccer and baseball and football and tennis, all the sports that many of you are coaching, because that intensity can vary upon a lot of things, and as it affects skill, and as skill goes down, RPE is clearly going up, and force output, if you will, as it relates to the skill, is going down. That is not something we want to reinforce. We need to take a closer look at what's happening to make sure that's not the case going forward. That said, rest versus active rest. Rest completely when the activity is of extremely high intensity, whereby you need to have 100% replenishment of ATP and need to rest at least 3 minutes before you do it again. It's common in a lot of coaching practices, not necessarily you coaches, because I don't know, but certainly want to make sure it's clear. A lot of coaches will do things between doing really explosive or high output, high level, maximal strength exercises. They'll do something between. That's fine, but you've got to understand you're going to be lowering the force production for whatever comes next. So you got to be clear if that was okay with you. If it was, then that is absolutely all right. Otherwise, active rest is something you do between sets when it's more moderate to high or moderately high intensity, or certainly if it's low intensity. You can do things between sets because you're not worried about trying to replenish full ATP. You're not worried about the ability to perform at 90+% force output for the very next set. That's when we have active rest. Whether it comes between active rest between sets is what we're specifically talking about here. Certainly, if you're accomplishing or needing someone to perform a rest day, you got to be clear about, do they need a full rest, not do anything? Maybe that's applicable, or maybe it's more toward active rest, in which case active rest, we want to make sure they're engaging in activities between 40-50% max VO2 max, which is essentially 60+% max heart rate. Okay, somewhere in that 60 plus. You want to go much more above 60, 70+% max heart rate for active rest type or recovery type exercise, okay, on a recovery type day. That said, the intricacies of hormonal balance, there's so much going on internally. We keep talking about homeostatic balance and the intent of trying to retain or return to homeostatic balance. There's an optimal level for every individual. It's a little different for everyone about how much cortisol is being secreted, how much insulin is rising, how much adrenaline is secreted during a given time of exertion at high levels whereby adrenaline is needed to get the body going at a high level of output, right? Or testosterone levels to increase for purposes of actually enhancing muscle mass long term, or IGF growth factor, human growth hormone, right? All those things. It's a very difficult thing. And our goal, of course, is when we program properly, those things happen. It should hopefully be obvious, right? We're not going to be testing hormonal balance during our exercise programs unless we have some sort of high-level technology that I don't know about for our athletes, which is phenomenal. If you can test hormonal balance during your training session, please do. But that said, we want to maximize their output, their performance, and that's how we know if they're getting better, they're improving, they're improving, they're improving. That's how we know we're getting that internal hormonal balance. Right? If they're not there, it could be our programming. Maybe it's not our programming. Maybe it's something else. But we have to keep trying to figure out what that is. Carbohydrate and fat, not protein, are used for energy primarily. Protein can be used for energy through the process of gluconeogenesis, but it is not a common thing to be involving at all. We don't want our bodies to be utilizing protein because it simply means you're not going to have any carbohydrate present. The book actually refers at one point to when exercise goes in that 3-4 hours plus, your body will start utilizing protein for energy. Well, yeah, because carbohydrates used up, which is not good. The output will necessarily drop. It will have to. Okay? And that's not the ideal goal. That's why some people go so far as to say you should eat meals every 2 to 3 hours to avoid your body going into some other source and actually taking away muscle because it's got to go somewhere long term, of course, not just one day while your muscle goes away from your body eating that, but certainly longer term. We want to make sure we understand that carbohydrates are our primary energy source during higher level activity. Anything that's certainly 80-85% output or above, 75-80+% max heart rate is going to almost always be more carbohydrate than fat. The book refers to more like 80-85%, but you can argue easily the lesser conditioned person, even lower down percentage-wise, you're going to see carbohydrate utilized primarily, not fat. Fat is actually utilized more primarily at about 60% VO2 max, which is about 70-75% max heart rate. That said, it doesn't mean you're going to burn more fat total. It just simply means you're burning more fat during exercise. There's a big difference between those things. You're burning more carb during exercise, higher intensities. You're burning more fat percentage-wise of the actual total nutrients used, which is actually less than high-intensity exercise when you're engaging in low-intensity exercise. But ultimately, longer term, we want the best form of training to maximize metabolism. And we talk about it for making sure we get the proper nutrients for the person during exertion, but we don't want to get into discussions in terms of you're going to lose more fat by engaging in lower intensity exercise, or that you're going to burn more fat by engaging in higher intensity exercise. Neither one is true. It's all relative to the proper level of training for a given day. Okay. That said, one more big thing about our reminders of who we are not registered dietitians. Many of you are referring to creating plans, or almost it's unclear if you're talking about creating plans or just giving advice. Giving dietetic advice is perfectly understandable. We want you to eat more oatmeal, less cereal out of a box. Make your oatmeal, right? We want you to eat more whole foods rather than eating things out of packages and frozen foods. We'd like you to eat stuff you make rather than you going and eating out if at all possible. But not getting into eat a 4-ounce piece of meat with a handful, approximately 4 or 5 ounces of broccoli, and 2 handfuls or 1.5 handfuls or whatnot of brown rice or quinoa. Or we don't want to talk like that. That is diet planning. That's a dietitian's job. We also don't want that dietitian to telling someone, here, I want you to engage in 30 minutes, 30 seconds of work period, 90 seconds rest period. You don't need a trainer. Just here's exactly how I want you to do your training program. So keep it in mind. That is not our area of expertise. We help. We do the best we can with our understanding of it. But at the same time, that is not our job, and we shouldn't be going too deeply with this. If we need it, we got to find a way to get help from a dietitian. Now, we can translate the information they give to us and give it to our athletes. We can totally do that. We can say, based on the fact the dietitian gave this to us, same wise with a physical therapist. Injury problems. I will always try to solve someone's injury problems and see what I can do to help them out. But I will quickly determine if I cannot help them, I have to get them to see a physical therapist. That's what we need to do as coaches as well. Medical doctors, or any sort of thing, anything that seems to be puzzling us as to what's going on, why the person's not performing well. For me, back 20 years ago, when I was engaging an intensity level with the intention of performing at the Olympic level for track and field, 800, half mile, I didn't know what was going on. Performance was dropping. But otherwise, I looked good. I seemed fine. I just didn't feel particularly good. And it took a medical doctor to do blood tests to figure out hormonally what was going on. So make sure you get that help when you need it. Do everything you can to help everybody, but realize there are specialists in areas that are beyond us. So when you talk about it in your posts, make sure it's clear what you're talking about that you can and can't do, what your job really is as far as what we do during exercise and between it. But otherwise, we look for expert help beyond us, which we all should do because no one does it alone. Everyone gets help from everyone, and that's how we all get better. That said, going into week 4, chapters 7 and 8, as we talk about the test, of course, at the end of your week as well, which you probably want to make sure you go over the information in this video if you're already doing it now, as well as reading the chapters and maybe take a look back at the past chapters and sample posts to make sure you're ready for the test as well. But when we talk about nervous system, the neuromuscular connection, when it comes time for information that's actually translated to the central nervous system from the peripheral nervous system, and the central nervous system passes back the information to the peripheral nervous system to get the muscles to fire, to get the right muscle fibers to fire in the right sequence, in the right amount, right number of fibers, that's what we're really saying, right? That action potential, that neuron fires, and the action potential is sent down that neuron in the dendrites to attach to another axon as communication goes back and forth till you get the right muscle fibers to fire. Hopefully the right muscle fibers, at least whatever your body is deciding is the right ones right now is what they're going to fire, right? To build that connection, that takes time. That's not something that just happens right away. That's why you see some much more accomplished athlete look so much more fluid, because it's taken time to build coordination, which actually requires a lower intensity of exercise in the beginning, longer duration, and rest periods may not be that necessarily much required because we're not talking about actively challenging exercise, just technique challenging exercise. If it doesn't look good, slow them down. It's a simple rule. If you're not performing well, slow it down, reduce the range of motion, reduce the weight. It is just that simple, your big 3. Whenever someone's not performing well, those are your big 3. Big 3 aren't working, you got the right thing, wrong thing for the person to be doing in this moment. They're not ready for it, okay? That said, the all or none law reminds us that when a muscle fiber, or fibers, because it's really rarely just one fiber, when muscle fibers fire, when neurons fire a number of different fibers, hundreds or thousands of fibers at a given moment in time for particular movement, we're talking about all those muscle fibers are on. The light switch is on or it's off. There is no between and partial contraction, which should negate any need for anybody ever worrying about trying to partially contract something to make it work. Okay? We want to utilize the full range of motion capability of that joint, utilize the maximization of that muscle within movement skill type level exercises. Got to be more careful about when we start talking about maximal strength and hypertrophy and power type exercises, whereby we may not need the entire range. Just depends on numerous factors there. But generally speaking, we're actually moving with trying to increase movement skill, increasing overall capability. We want that controlled range of motion. We want to achieve the full capacity of the joint. Not to be saying the same thing about what the muscle does, the standpoint of you know partial movement of a joint, it doesn't mean partial contraction of a muscle. Certain fibers are on in that moment when you get that partial contraction. Keep on going, more fibers might become involved, but you're not going to somehow involve parts of a fiber. It really makes no sense to do partial repetitions. It's on or it's off. And that said, there's no dimmer switch. And as far as the size principle of muscle recruitment, your body will always go first to the type 1 muscle fibers, the red ones, the longer duration oxidative type capability type muscle fibers, because they're the ones that can go for long periods. Your body says, hey, let's get those guys, because those guys can go for longer periods, do whatever we ask them to do at that low intensity. If we need to, we'll bring in the type 2A, which is more pink, more moderate oxidative capacity, ability to produce more force. We're talking more glycolysis type level activities for type 2A fibers are much more predominant. And of course, for really high output that can only be handled for very, very short periods of time, your body just can't give it to you any more than that. We're talking about muscles that are exercises that involve those type 2B muscle fibers, right? When you first start engaging any movement, the moment you start to move, the muscle that's actually firing, the fibers that are firing, are certainly working in that moment from ATP-CP. And the moment you keep on going with those same fibers, it's going to keep dropping down as far as energy production as you go through it. When we start thinking in terms of intensity of activity, we want to talk about muscle fiber involvement. When we talk about the high-level output, high-level power, explosive type focused work, that's our type 2B muscle fibers. They're going to be engaging primarily the ATP, CB, creatine phosphate, adenosine triphosphate energy system, phosphagen energy system. 1 to 5 seconds, maybe 1 to 15, like we said, maximum 1 to 30, possibly, where they're the primary energy system. And then, of course, 30 seconds to anywhere between 2 and 3 minutes, or some would say 15 seconds to 2 or 3 minutes, arguable in there for that 15 30 second time frame, how much glycolysis takes over versus creatine phosphate, probably very individual in that regard. At that point, now we're going to see more towards glycolysis, which is typically more the type 2A fibers. Fibers that have the moderate oxidative capabilities and the moderate level force output. Okay, and of course, longer duration going towards the type 1, becoming the primary one in this, because you really just can't get much out of your type 2B, your type 2 or type 2X, which is really type 2B. Type 2X we refer to as now, and the type 2A muscle fibers. Okay. That said, that was the muscle fiber types. Muscle actions, concentric. When you move something, when the muscle shortens under load, that's the concentric action. When you hold still and you're holding static, that is isometric action. If you're under load, you're under stress, and you're holding something, trying to maintain it in space, that is isometric. And of course, eccentric, you're lowering that load, trying to return it back to normal. You are not stronger eccentrically, like some people will say. It simply takes less effort to slow something down than it does to move it or to stop it, right? That's the reason why, once again, you can hold a weight, and you can hold, but then all of a sudden you can't hold it anymore. It's lowering towards you. You can still lower it. You certainly can't move it. You can't change its direction, which is what a concentric action is for the muscle, but you can slow it down, which is the eccentric. It's the one that requires least effort from you, so it's the one you can still do despite the fact you have no capacity, at least not of any relatively high level, to perform concentric work, right? When someone starts to fail, what's really failing in terms of their movement skill is going to be more towards the concentric, typically speaking. They can certainly take a beating on the eccentric, so especially with something like jumping, sprinting. There's so much more force coming down eccentrically on the body than during other normal activities. That's a lot for the body to take. It does, again, take less effort for the muscle to slow you down. The harder thing is it can be tougher on the joint, eccentrically trying to slow somebody down. It requires good mobility, requires good basic strength, right? The capacity to handle those loads. So we have to take that into account when we ask people to engage in more explosive or higher level activities, the joints and how we move, and not just the concept of moving something concentrically, holding it still isometrically, slowing it down eccentric. It's deeper than that, right? GTOs, the Golgi tendon organs, and the muscle spindles. The GTOs regulate tension. So whenever you pick up some heavy object, your Golgi tendon organs that are attached or involved, the neurons there, are relative to the muscle fibers that they innervate. They're basically going to tell you, stop, don't do it, way too heavy. You're trying to pick up a 300-pound object right now. We're not ready for this thing, or I don't know what the weight is, but it depends on the person, right? It's too much. GTOs will say, don't, and make you let go. It'll cause the muscle to release, to relax, because of too much tension development or the tension developing too fast. Same happens with you get that twitch motion there when you try to move too quick with too much force, or also possibly too much length, which is more toward muscle spindle. If you try to increase the length of a muscle too fast and that muscle cannot handle that length, basically the muscle spindle will try to contract the muscle to protect it. You protect it from going too far with the length or too fast with the length. The muscle spindles will try to contract the muscle to protect it, also called the myotatic or stretch reflex. Both are helpful actions to understand in terms of getting more flexibility. Both are helpful actions to understand that when you're having those things happen, you're either engaging too much force or too much speed, too much length of the muscles during a given motion. Any of those things are affecting you as to why that's happening. You've got to be constantly aware of that autogenic inhibition, which is holding a static type stretch. The muscle will autogenically be inhibited when you hold it in place, that first point of contraction, 20-30 seconds, allow the muscle to autogenically inhibit itself for the GTO to override the muscle spindle. This can't be done if you're in pain. If you're in pain, it hurts, you can't relax, there's no stretch. Reciprocal inhibition, when you move through a full range of motion, the opposing musculature must relax. So by just moving a lot, you're going to be activating one muscle group or one area of muscle groups regarding the joint action that we're talking about. The opposing muscles must fully relax, or you get no proper motion. It's just that simple. That said, do not demonize static stretching. Static stretching has a lot of positive benefit for getting someone to relax. If the goal is not to relax, then don't do static stretching right now. It's just that simple. Make it as simple as that. But don't get into static stretching. It's not helpful. Static stretching causes problems. You shouldn't static stretch before exercise. It's just not true. If you want to get the person to relax before you start to slowly activate and evolve and get more dynamic activity involved, that works great. but do not demonize one or the other without understanding it. We become way too quick to make something sound great or not great without fully understanding it at all times when we're coaching and teaching and helping people. Kinesthesia is your feel. You're going to get the most feel by performing the exercise. As we said, you want to develop coordination, longer duration activity, something that's light, something you can handle at that level of stress, getting the proper range of motion, handle proper action. You got to be able to repetitively be able to perform it over and over and over again. You can't march with good form for step upon step upon step upon step. Why would I want you sprinting? You can't actually, you have good technique going slow motion, full range of motion. If I have you going fast, you're going to get hurt, or you're at least going to have poor force production and not get the proper result, right? That said, as far as training to reduce symptoms or precursors to disease, that is our job. We're trying to reduce problems. We're trying to find the right level of activity so that we can actually avoid things like longer term with cancer, heart problems, nervous system issues that are going to happen from chronic stress. A lot of this stress will have nothing to do with the exercise we're engaging. It could be other things. But we can help people who have those kinds of problems, whether they're our athletes or anybody else we're trying to help, by understanding how to adapt exercise to meet the needs of the person. As we always keep saying, make sure we adapt to the level they currently are now, knowing where they are now, not just where they want to go. Okay? And lastly then, final thoughts. Kind of already alluded to it, specifics versus generalities in discussion. Be as clear as you can. Act like, once again, you're designing this program for your assistant coach who's going to take over for you this week, has got to figure out how to design this program. Not just your professor or instructor hounding you to give more clarity in what you write. There's no question that a large majority, and maybe all of you, have high-level capabilities. I'm going to keep saying it in your coaching, but you have to provide more clarity because you can always get better. You can be good, but we can never be satisfied with being good. You imagine telling your athletes that. I'm good. I'm not going to try to get any better because I'm already good. That makes absolutely no sense. We expect more from them. They should expect more from us. And of course, exam preparation, once again, I'd watch the weekly videos, maybe again, read through the sample posts, certainly reread your chapters. The goal is you take that exam and you go, piece of cake. There'll be some piece of cake questions in there. There's going to be some challenging questions too. The more prepared you are, maybe it all feels like it's easy. That's the goal. But don't take it lightly or it will surprise you. And as far as the research paper, that is in just over 2 weeks now, basically in week 5, you choose a topic, any topic you want, okay? However, that topic must be something that you can describe in 1,000 to 1,500 of your own words. You don't count words. If you got a lot of quotes in there, I literally do count the words. I'm not going to actually expect you to get to 15, but if you're like at 600, I'm not going to count if you're 950 or 9, whatever. But if you're 600 words or 700 of your own words, you're going to get downgraded in your score because you're not making the effort here to give a little more depth to what we're talking about. Because I guarantee whatever you talk about, we're going to find somebody out there who's written entire books on the information. So keep in mind, because of that, we want to make sure we're specific enough in the information. We're not so general that you're giving ideas that it's hard to be specific on, which is part of the purpose of the paper. At the same time, we got to find something that gives us enough information to work with as well. It's a tough balance. It's not going to be perfect. I'm not expecting perfection from you, but you need to have a lot of clarity in that, and something's going to take you 1,000, 1,500 of your own words. It's at least 4 to 6 pages of your own words, double-spaced and whatnot. Make sure you cite it well, right? If you want to get that A, which I hope you do, it needs to be well written. Means it makes it just like, that's well written. I like that. Sounds really good. Well written, right? Virtually free of grammatical or content errors. You can have a mistake here and there and still get an A. But if you have gross generalities or if you have significant deviations from something that is true, it's going to be hard to get that. So you better double check that information. Don't make it an opinion paper. It's not an editorial. Certainly I expect you to talk about things you like and why you're bringing up the topic, but it needs to be backed by research and science, right? Be specific. Make sure you cite it well. Make sure you cite it accurately because you can lose points on that as well. Generally speaking, it's pretty common to write a decent paper and get a B. Very, very common. To get that A, it's going to take another level. So expect that if that's what you're looking to get out of your 700-point paper. Okay, 400-point exam, 700-point paper this particular time around. Okay, email me, call me if you have questions. Once again, on to week 4. Keep up the good work. I know it's difficult with all things you always have going on. I totally understand. Check in with me as you need, and keep moving forward. We'll talk to you again soon.